Chapter 7. We're moving right along, right? We're in the second half now. And so far, so good. I've managed to shorten some of the videos some, so hopefully they won't take up quite as much time as before. All right, this chapter is about nonverbal communication. And one thing that we're going to be looking at is nonverbal still includes the voice, but not the actual words that we're talking about. And we can demonstrate so much to anyone and everyone with our nonverbal communication alone. Remember, there is no such thing as no communication. Okay? So nonverbal is part of that. All nonverbal skills are vital, and all behavior has communicative value. Think about it. If I just look at someone with an expression, doesn't even matter what it is, or it can be, okay, I'm sure that looked pretty goofy on your side, but it doesn't matter what it is. It's still communicative. If someone calls and I look at it, I'm like, that definitely makes a statement. If I look at it and just turn over the phone without even changing expression, that also says something specific. So all behavior has communicative value, and you need to keep that in mind anytime you're communicating or in a relationship with someone else, or at work or at school or whatever it may be. Nonverbal communication is primarily relational. This usually means that the nonverbals we use can change according to the relationship that we have with the other individual. Okay, so that's part of impression management, and that's that. Nonverbal stuff is the stuff that kind of shapes and reflects the kinds of relationships we have with others. Some people you might, it says here, greetings, etc. Some people you might walk up, hey, how you doing? Big hug. Other people you're like, hello, how do you do? And you just shake hands. That says something. What does it say? Well, it indicates the type of relationship you have with that other individual. And of course, we know that as well as reflecting and shaping relationships, nonverbal communication can also convey relationships. What kind of nonverbal cues can you make informed guesses about how others are feeling? Let's look at some of those cues. You've got energy. Are they usually up and they're just down? Are they usually kind of mellow and then today they're just all over the place? Their facial expression. Our face can say so much. They say that the eyes are the access to the soul, right? The doorway to the soul. Well, I don't know about that, but they are the doorway to everything you're feeling. And it's not just the eyes, it's everything around the eyes. It's, how you use your eyebrows. It's whether you've got a smirk or you're smiling. It doesn't matter what it is. What did I just say? I'm going to turn it over now. She'll understand. I will call her back. So, we also have body language. How you stand, your stance. Are you usually quite upright and today you're kind of slumping? Or are you usually kind of slumping and today you're quite upright? Our tone, how we speak, not what we say, but how we say it. And I love this little cartoon. Apparently, I have done something to upset you. You've got the fence down the middle of the bed. Communication skills are a huge importance in all, relationships that we have in our jobs and everything else. But take a look at this chart. Now, this chart kind of indicates that nonverbal communication is only 55%. But if we look at vocal variety, that is still considered nonverbal because it's how we use our language, not the words themselves. So that brings it up to, 93%? And so some scientists believe that our nonverbal cues, including our vocal variety, represent about 93% of our communication. Others believe it's around 65%. You can make that decision for yourself. You can look around at others. You can look at your own communications with others and see how they go and pay attention to it. Notice that words are really only about 7 to 10% of our communication. That's it. That's not a lot. But you still have to choose those words carefully, don't you? All right. So let's look at some characteristics of nonverbal communication. In mediated messages, we've adapted emoticons. And you're saying, what? You're used to hearing the word emojis. But trust me, when the phones first came out, those were called emoticons. We didn't have little keyboards. We didn't have all the fun stuff. So how did we make signs and symbols? Well, we did it the old-fashioned way. If we wanted to make a smiley face, colon, smiley face. Some people put a nose in there, right? That's what we did. So that's how we started using emoticons and emojis as our indications of nonverbal in our text, in our mediated messages. Because you could say, you know, I love you, smiley face, I love you, frowny face, and those are two totally different messages, aren't they? Punctuation is also a nonverbal communication. And now this one, punctuation, is not the same as the punctuation from before, okay? This is actual grammar punctuation, periods, exclamation points. Don't you love it when people use like 5 exclamation points to express how excited they are? Capital, all caps. Lexical surrogates, the things that we say in place of words, like instead of saying, okay, some people put KK. I don't know why. But we also have the text surrogates, the lexical surrogates like this. Oh, it makes me crazy. It's called text talk. Are you... Well, what can somebody can say? Are you late? I'm sorry, we have whole keyboards now. You can use real words. Okay, we did that before when we only had number pads. It saved time, but not anymore. So you need to get away from that. But also time management is a form of mediated communication, nonverbal communication. If someone texts you, and you look at it, you might see it immediately and you think, you know what, I'm going to wait a few minutes. That is a statement. That says something. Depending on the topic, it could be a positive or a negative. So how important are these items in nonverbal communication? Vary. They indicate tone, they indicate purpose, and they indicate the emotional connection involved. Take a look at this. I love this. This is how we made emoticons in English. And look at how the Japanese use their emoticons. In English, our stress is on the shape of the mouth, isn't it? We have the parenthesis, the capital D, we do add the eyes a little bit with the winky on the third one, frowny face, tear. You get the idea. The Japanese stress the eyes, and how the eyes are shaped are more important in Japanese emoticons. I just thought that was interesting, and you might get a kick out of it. All right, let's look at some of the characteristics that we use nonverbal communication for, okay? And you will be tested over some of these, so you need to pay attention. Are you paying attention? I don't hear you. All right, that, by the way, was called complimenting. It was an expression that matched my thought and emotion in that moment. Repeating, when someone asks for directions, you often repeat with a gesture. You say, oh, it's over that direction. That would be repeating. Complimenting, matching the expression with the thoughts and the emotion behind it. Hi, and then you just kind of, that matches what you were just saying. So it's a compliment to what you were saying. Substituting, when someone asks what's up, you may just shrug. Or someone waves and you just wave back. Or they say, hey, how's it going? Using body language or facial expression in place of the words. That's called substituting. Some of these can be combined, by the way. Accenting, it's when you use a nonverbal device in your oral message. And in this case, it would be vocal. Okay, accenting is always using it vocally. It was your idea. Regulating is when you use a nonverbal device, but it's behaviorally. It was your idea. Okay, so you're adding everything in to the concept. You're combining everything, not just the voice. Contradicting is when you give mixed messages. I used to do this to my daughter. When she was really young, she would do that annoying thing. Mama, 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 mom, 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 momsy, ma, I love you. It was adorable. It was cute the first few times. But, you know, kids are classic this way. I love it. They do it again and again and again because it got a great response the first time. By the end, you're like, I love you too. What did that expression, what did that tone convey? I love you, but I'm getting really tired of this. Impatience, frustration, maybe. Nonverbal communication can also offer some deception cues. Now, pay attention to this. We overestimate our abilities to detect lies. How many of you think you can always detect a lie? I don't know if you're answering, but I'd like to think that you are. The point is, sometimes, yes, there are definite ways that we can detect lies. Some people tend to flush right here when they're lying. Some people at the moment of the lie, they look away because they cannot make eye contact where they're lying. So, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm fine. And just brief look away. And this is called leakage. These are the things that we do. I had my kids convinced that their ears turned red when they lied. So whenever they tried to tell me a lie, they'd do this. It worked great until they learned. But you can look at facial expressions. Some people, not everybody responds the same way. Their eyes look off, or they might get a very plain look on their face, or they might twitch something. Speech patterns. Some people stutter when they lie. Some people stutter all the time, but don't when they lie. You have to know the person involved to really understand. Pupil dilation. The problem I have with that one is you'd have to be real close to them to see the pupils. I don't have that good sight. I don't think I could do it. So nonverbal communication is kind of ambiguous, and we cannot always depend on the fact that we think we can tell when someone is lying. Okay, now here's an example. This is just something I pulled offline when I was doing some research for this. I actually pulled this off in like 2015, so it's been around for a minute. And I took the video out, so please ignore the video pieces. But on this date, he visited this location, and you could tell by the way he was speaking and his body language that he really didn't want to be there. Okay, he covered his mouth when he's talking. If you're covering your mouth when you're talking, sometimes that can be an indication of an untruth. So he's also rubbing the bottom of his nose, which means he's covering his mouth. Okay. In the statement of a declarative statement, I'm so excited to be here. That's highly indicative of a lie. Is that 100% all the time? No. So you cannot always depend on it. This was just some research that some university was doing on body language. Now, what can influence our nonverbal communication? Gender. We already talked about it, the masculine and the feminine. Okay, the feminine has a tendency to be softer. Notice I say tendency, I didn't say always. The masculine has a tendency to be stronger and louder. So gender can influence your nonverbal communication. Our culture, our personal space influences our nonverbal communication. You probably noticed I just rearranged my office a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to keep it this way, but it's my personal space and I'm going to keep messing with it until I get what I like. Okay. Eye contact. Some people are very good at eye contact. Some people are not, but different cultures have rules with eye contact. And I'm going to tell you something right now that you need to know if you're going into education. It's cultural. So you need to understand this. When I first started teaching, if I was fussing at a kid, not fussing, but, talking sternly with a child about behaving in class, and the kid wasn't looking at me, I fell into this trap, and I would do exactly what my parents did with me. And I would say, look at me when I'm talking to you, please. Not realizing that may have been against this child's culture. Many cultures are the type where if you are fussing or talking sternly with a child, that child needs to keep their eyes on the ground. They are not looking you in the face. That's sassing if you look them in the eyes. I did not know this. I learned pretty quickly. And so basically, when I was telling those children, look at me when I'm talking to you, I'm giving them mixed messages. On the one hand, I'm saying, I want you to pay attention to me and respect what I say. But on the other hand, what I'm saying is, but I know it's disrespectful for you to look me in the face, so I want you to disrespect me as well. It's confusing to children. So if you're going into education, be aware of that. Don't ever ask a child to look at you in the face when you're talking to them. That might be a cultural thing. So eye contact. It's also in many Asian nations. It's considered inappropriate for a person of lower status to look someone of higher status in the eyes. So you have to pay attention to that. Use of time can be a nonverbal. We are a monochronic culture. That means that we believe in time frames. If it starts at 6, it starts at 6. We need to be there before 6. Okay? But polychronic cultures are kind of fluid. I was in Jamaica and we were going on a tour. We were going to go see a river in Dunn's River Falls. We were going to Dunn's River Falls, and the tour left at like 9:30 or something like that. And it's 9:40 and we're over here, we're late. And we go ask the tour guide, when are we leaving? Oh, it's Jamaica time. We get there when we get there, but you'll be there for your full time. I was like, what? They're very cultural, it's very relaxed. There are some stories about this in your textbook. You need to read those. They're hilarious. Because if you're not aware of it, it can catch you by surprise. And then there are some universal nonverbal behaviors that span all cultures. Okay, smiles are universal. Laughter is universal. Crying, sadness, that's universal. All right, so be aware of those. Now, body language is totally different, and it's called kinesics, by the way. Your positioning, your body orientation tells us something. If you're talking to someone, and look at this guy right here. Okay, you're talking to someone face to face. He's got one foot pointing at the door. Then he's indicating, I don't really want to be here. Okay, hands in pockets, not really interested. I don't agree with everything that's on here, but it's interesting to see. We already know that hands on hips kind of indicates an aggressive posture. We know that crossing your arms in front of you indicates that you are blocking out the person in front of you. So if you're doing that, that's aggressive, but that's also negating the purpose. And so, but I get cold a lot, so I tend to cross my arms a lot when I'm cold. I had to learn to cross my arms like this. It made just not by not crossing, but having one up above the other. And it gave a different indication. My nonverbal message in this case is I'm a little chilly. My nonverbal in this case is not that I'm a little chilly, but I don't want to hear what you have to say. So posture and body orientation are fascinating subjects to study. The CIA has entire courses about this. It's cool. Now, gestures are different. They're still nonverbal communication, but we have to remember some gestures are not intentional. Illustrators are those verbal accents over there, or hi. Emblems are movements with precise meanings. I'm nodding my head. Now in England, they don't call that nodding. They call it shaking. So it gets a little confusing if you read a lot of books from around the world. They call this shaking. They call this shaking. don't know. But it's an emblem. We know what the one finger salute means. But in England, they have a different one. It's a two-finger salute, and it's always backwards. It's never forwards. This is victory. This is the salute. We know what this means. In many nations, this means okay. When you're scuba diving, this means I'm okay. Okay. So it has a very positive connotation. But there are some nations where this is a very dirty gesture, like in Australia. And one of our presidents got off the plane and did this. Oh dear, flipped off the whole country. Those are emblems. Adapters are responses to environment, like when I was doing this, okay? Or it could be an emotional environment. If you ever gotten so angry you were shaky. Manipulators, not all fidgeting indicates uneasiness. I have a tendency to fidget. I talk with my hands. I play with things. Sometimes I've got my little thing here and I'll do this. Whatever it may be, just because I'm in motion does not mean I'm uneasy. It just means I'm fidgety. So you have to be careful with that. And of course, your face and eyes. We have what's called micro expressions. Oh, we're going to ignore that. There we go. Micro expressions. And this actor here, I cannot remember the name of this guy. But what he did was they took pictures of him acting in various, states. And you can see the difference, how the eyebrows change, the eyes change, the nose, the way you hold your mouth, the everything about you can indicate emotional states. Now, this group thing that we were going to do, it would have been fun. You were going to pay attention to a classmate in class and take notes of what you think of what's going on, and then share it with them and see what they had to say. So, but the challenge, so I added something different in here. It's analyze those around you. Okay. Can you identify their emotional states without being told how they feel? Not everyone can. There is something called nonverbal learning disorder in NVLD, where people, believe it or not, are unable to identify the emotional states of those around them. That's okay. But you have to be aware that it can happen. So if you're one of those that can't figure it out, well, guess what? You're just kind of normal and it's all right. Some other types of nonverbal communication. Silence. Silence is communication. Just because you're not talking doesn't mean you're not communicating something. Sometimes it's purposeful silence. Sometimes it's just you have nothing to say. You're so shocked. That kind of thing. Now, the voice itself is nonverbal because the words that we use, we could write them, we could type them, we can say them monotone, we can say them in any way, but how we use the words, that's called paralanguage, can show a lot of our emotional states. We've got the emphasis. What words do you place emphasis on? What syllables do you place emphasis on? You've got your tone. We've talked about that. You've got the rate. How fast do you talk? Many people, when they get excited, they talk faster. That's why when people give speeches and stuff, if they practice in advance, they think it's going to be 5 minutes, and then they give their speech in class and it's 4 minutes. Well, you went faster because you were nervous. Energy. Pitch. Highness or lowness. Now, here's something interesting. Many people in the moment of a lie will change their pitch almost a full octave up. Not everybody, so you can't go by that. Don't say, but my professor said, nay. Volume, how loud you speak. Okay. Pauses. Now, we have the unintentional pauses where you might be thinking, you might be in discomfort, you're just kind of, and then you keep going. But then we have the vocalized pauses. They're called disfluencies. I call it filler. What this means is that you're in the middle of talking and you don't want to stop. You don't want to stop talking and put a pause in there because somebody might jump in and talk over you. So you have to keep going, or you're still thinking of the words. You're talking faster than you can speak. And so things come out like, and you know, one of my favorites, I had a student in a speech class many, many years ago. This was not a college class. This was a high school speech class. And his, I kid you not, was, you feel me? And he didn't even realize he did it as much as he said he did. So I showed him his video and he just stood there. It was like, oh, wow, man. He was just in shock. So, but those are called disfluencies or vocalized pauses, and they can indicate discomfort. Now, touch is another form of nonverbal communication. The art of touch is called haptics, and appropriate touch can influence compliance. If you are going into the education field, here's something to help you out, okay? As your students are working, you should always be up and walking among them. And if a student misbehaves, now you don't always want to lay your hands on their back and say, how are you doing? But some of them, you can kind of touch a shoulder. Hey, how's it going? You getting your work all right? Yeah? Okay. And then you move on. It's not something that's extended. It's not uncomfortable. But if you have a student who does pull away, when you do that, make note of that. Touch makes them uncomfortable. Don't use it. Use proxemics instead. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. In a store, if you notice, if you go shopping and you're making a big purchase, that salesperson always wants to shake your hand. They always want to shake your hand. Why? Because they know that touch can influence compliance. If you want to go look at a car, you want to look at a couch, sometimes they might actually touch your shoulder and say, you know what? I think we got it over that direction. Let's go over here. Again, very minor, not something that you can get worked up and upset about. It's just a minor touch, but it can influence compliance. Appearance, physical attractiveness can be a type of nonverbal communication. I had a friend of mine who did this on purpose. She doesn't wear makeup much. She really doesn't. And she's quite happy with it. And I, as you can see, I don't wear much either. But what she did was she took a picture without makeup and then she applied makeup and put them side by side. And it was interesting that, when she didn't have the makeup on and she went into a shop and she was trying to do some shopping and they paid attention. I mean, they were like, can we help you? Hi, how are you? They weren't rude or anything. But when she was all made up and looking good with her clothing and her makeup and all that, they fell all over her when she walked in that door. She was confused. None of us were. We're like, okay. Physical space is called proxemics. And this is the use of proximity to achieve compliance or whatever the problem may be or whatever the issue may be going on. You have different types of distance. You've got your intimate distance, which is right here. It's usually up to 18 inches. And quite frankly, only really good friends and family should get into that intimate distance, right? That's the only people that should be there. What happens when you're at the grocery store and they push up against you? You're like, oh, hell no. And you're trying to step away, right? Then you've got your personal distance. It's between that intimate distance, about 4 feet. Social distancing, sound familiar? Social distance is usually 4 to 12 feet. Of course, nowadays we're being told 6 feet, 6 feet. It can be further than 6 feet, and I'm good with that. And then you've got your public distance. Have you ever noticed if you go to the mall, any mall, it doesn't matter which mall, but if you go during a peak time when a lot of people are there, you're walking down one side, and then somebody comes walking the wrong direction on that side, and we do consider it the wrong direction, don't we? We tend to move as far over as possible to give them space, that public distance. Okay. Territoriality is a little bit different. I love this little lion. This is my rock, not your rock. Don't try to take my rock. There will be consequences. But we do get territorial about our personal space, don't we? This is my space. Don't mess with my space. I had a desk mate at a IBM when I worked there many, many years ago. She had a desk right next to mine. And her desk was always a wreck. And so she would end up putting stuff on my desk, and I would just look at it like she was nuts, pick it up and put it back on her desk. That was my space. Don't mess with my space. We even do this in classes, don't we? In many of our classes, we do not have assigned seating. But after the first 2 or 3 days, you kind of get into your groove and you've got your spot. This is my spot. I like my spot. Don't mess with my spot. You turn into Sheldon about your spot. And if somebody comes in and they try to sit in your spot, you're like, mm-mm. And it's hilarious to watch if somebody changes spots one day for some reason. I've had this happen where the other student comes in and just stands there staring at this person in their spot like, what are you doing? And they look betrayed and hurt. We get territorial about the strangest things, don't we? Physical environment. Our decor indicates quite a bit about our personality. And it really does. That's why I keep rearranging in here. That's why I keep changing my space, because the office is new in my house and I'm still working on what I want it to do and what I want it to say about me. Notice on my bookshelf back here, I've got a lot of family images. That's because they're important to me. And then, just stuff like that. Our decor indicates a lot about our personality. If you saw my camper, you would laugh. It's totally a gypsy wagon. My daughters called it the gypsy wagon. So our physical environment can also influence our interaction. You've heard about how some doctors' offices and different public spaces will paint walls to influence behaviors and emotional state. And it really can. Time, we've talked about some of that. It's called chronemics, the use of time as a nonverbal. It indicates power and status. Think in terms of if you go to the doctor, you could be, doctor, lawyer, Indian chief yourself, but you go to the doctor and you may have to wait a while, and they're not going to take pity on you because that doctor has the power. They have the status in that moment. If they came to your office, don't let them get upset if they have to wait. But it can also reflect the state of a relationship. Who makes who wait? All right. That is everything that we needed to see about this chapter. And I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.